Welcome back to Wildcat Fastbreak. This week marks a very significant anniversary in Northwestern basketball history. The silver anniversary of the biggest scoring game in Wildcat history, 49 points scored by our guest, Rich Falk, former Wildcat great, former head of Big Ten officials, and now still a frequent visitor at, hardly a visitor at Welsh Ryan Arena to watch the Wildcats. Coach, always good to see you. And let's go back 50 years to the night that you scored 49 points against Iowa. Had you come close to a game like that, or was this something that kind of caught everybody by surprise?
Well, it caught me and a lot of people by surprise because I had 30-point games several times. As a matter of fact, I think a couple of my 30-point games for visiting is still a record in the Big Ten also for other schools. I haven't played against other schools and scored as a visiting team. But that was in the 30s. Never did I expect to be in the 40s. While in high school I had scored in the 50s a few times. And so that I knew what it was like to get into the 40s also, but never expected to do it. I shot the ball 38 times in this game. Teams don't get 38 shots today. It's a different game, as we all know. It's now defense, and they lock you down, and the athletes are so much bigger, stronger, quicker, that I think it's very, this record may go on well after I'm gone because it's good. But we didn't have the three-point shot either. I would have been in the 60s, according to the video that when you watch it. And Rick Mount, as you know, the great player at Purdue, he has the Big Ten record, I think, of 62 or 61. He would have been in the 80s with the three-point shot.
Can you imagine? And I think I wanted to point that out for viewers who may be a little bit younger and weren't aware. There wasn't always a three-point shot in college basketball.
But it was a different game. It was offense. We scored in the 80s and 90s way more often. Now we see the 40s and the 50s and the 60-point games in Big Ten basketball and around the country because defense has taken over the game. And it's very, very hard to even get a shot, and it's hard to score. So that's the way the game has changed so much in 50 years. And, of course, I've been a part of it for the last 50 years, so I've seen that evolvement.
It was also an era with no shot clock, however.
No shot clock.
So you obviously weren't going into a four corners and trying to stall the game.
No, nobody even thought about four corners. You kept playing. And it was a fun game to play back then. It was a fun game to watch. It was less physical. And I was fortunate enough to be on a very good team, at Northwestern. We were preseason picks to win the Big Ten title back in 1963-64, and we lost a big center by the name of Jim Pitts, who became a prominent faculty member here and had a knee injury that kept him out of playing for us when we would have been a team that might have had a chance to be that first team to go to postseason play. We were that good with Rick LaPasa, my best friend still today, as an all Big Ten first teamer, and we all had eyes on that first ever postseason play going to the NCAA tournament, I can assure you.
Well, you later coached a team here to postseason play, the first one. We'll get to that in a moment. But at what point in the game did you think, hey, maybe there's something special going on here?
In the 49-point game? Well, it was the story is more interesting really than the fact that I scored 49 because it never would have been achieved by me without the sportsmanship of the opposing coach. University of Iowa, Sharm Sherman was the coach at the time. He also was a player for the University of Iowa, playing in McGaw Hall in 1956 for the national championship against the great Bill Russell and the San Francisco Dons. And in the preliminary game in 1956, Hal Greer from Temple, along with the great Guy Rogers, who's now being inducted into the Hall of Fame here soon, played third place games back then. He had 48 points. And so Sharm, watching the game as a player for Iowa, because they're going to play the championship right after this game, witnessed the 48 points by Hal Greer. I also, because my uncle, Ernie Nordstrom, assistant athletic director here at Northwestern, was privileged to come and watch it, and my uncle made a usher out of me and my dad and my brother so we could watch the national championship game here at Northwestern McGaw Hall. I, as an eighth grader, 5 feet tall, 90 pounds, dripping wet, watched the 48 points. I saw it in person. 8 years later, same people in the gym. I've got 42. Coach takes me out of the game. I should, because we're up by 25. We're having a big night against Iowa. And I've got my warm-ups up. I'm done. Well, Sharm Sherman again, because he had an attachment to the night of 48, playing it, the PA announcer had announced that I had broken the Northwestern record of 40 by my best friend Rick LaPasa and Joe Rutlick. So I'm done. And he went on to say during that timeout the McGaw Hall record's 48. And so Sharm, being the class act that he is, recruited me to Iowa, had a respect level back and forth to one another, saw fit to send his manager down to our head coach, Larry Glass at the time, and say, if you want to put Rich back in the game to see if he can break the McGaw Hall record, it's fine with me, we can't win. Wow. That's how, timeout! Larry Glass puts me back in, I'm fired away. My teammates want me to get the record, which of course meant a lot to me. The respect you have from your teammates is obviously, and the interesting thing at the end is that Sharm Sherman, the class act, and the as I said, the act of sportsmanship, went over to shake, as he should, the head coach, Larry Glass at the time, congratulated him on a win. Then he came right out, and the team was carrying me off the floor and reached up and shook my hand. He said, I still wish we had you at Iowa. So that's really the best part of the story, right, of scoring those points. It was because of the sportsmanship of the opposing coach who had recruited me to the University of Iowa.
How much time was left? Do you recall when you broke the record?
Yeah, there was about 5 minutes left, and so I was done. I was in my warm-ups when all this transpired, as I just explained. And when I got in there, I mean, I was just firing away in hopes that the last shot was kind of a miracle. The interesting thing about it, too, is it's been broken twice in terms of the 48. There's been 3 people that have had 48 in there. The Hal Greer that I broke. Then after me, Terry Furlow from Michigan State. Mark Aguirre from DePaul, having played against Loyola in our McGaw Hall, both had the 50th point in the basket. I'm at all these games, by the way, and I'm ready to congratulate somebody. It's time this record gets broken. And late in the game, in each case with Terry Furlow and with Mark Aguirre, they score, but it's disallowed with traveling, no basket.
Wow.
But they had the 50th in the hole. So it's just meant to be. And Chris Collins, interestingly enough, as a high school player at Glenbrook North, in an overtime game in McGaw Hall, had 40, I believe, or 42 points. And I'm there sitting with his dad, Doug, and we're, of course, hoping then that nothing I'd rather do than shake somebody's hand and breaking that record. So let's hope I live long enough for it's going to happen.
Well, you look at some great players who've come through the program. Look at Billy McKinney, who was a great scorer, and John Sherna. And they had huge games. Drew Crawford's had a 35-point game, I think. But it's interesting, none of those guys have been able to break that mark.
Well, it's going to take a huge night with a lot of threes, I think, and against a team that doesn't like to play a lot of defense, because today, as I said, it's just so hard to even get open and to get a shot that see, I have the record for field goals, too, in that game for Northwestern, 19. So I only had a 50% shooting night. It wasn't like I made everything. But when you shoot 38 times, you ought to make a few. And I was fortunate enough to make 19. So it's a memory, but I can assure you I don't expect to be here today talking about it, because I thought it would a long time ago been broken by all these great players we've had in the Big Ten over the years, and certainly at Northwestern included.
Here we are 50 years later. The Wildcats honored you at the game against Minnesota last week. Very quickly, I mentioned you coached the Wildcats to the NIT, an unforgettable season. You played your home games at DePaul's Alumni Hall, 1983. You beat Notre Dame on St. Patrick's Day at what was then the Rosemont Horizon, before losing on almost a half-court shot by Kenny Patterson. But that was a tremendous basketball team you had.
Well, it really was. We were proud, but you know, I often talk about that team with pride, because that was a team that really thought had a shot during my tenure as head coach of going to the NCAA, because we were 36 RPI. We were in the top 2 or 3 in strength of schedule. And we had 18 wins. Well, we really had 17 wins, I think, going into the postseason. First ever postseason opportunity, but we were sitting there on the bubble. And unfortunately, there were 7 teams that year that went into the NCAA. First time the Big Ten put 7 teams in the NCAA tournament. We were 8th place with that kind of a team, and we were good. The thing that people forget, though, is I had 2 big guys. We were only 7 deep. We had 2 big guys sitting out that year. Colin Murray, 7-foot center, would have been in his junior year. We had another player by the name of Dan Ivankovich, who would have been in his sophomore year. that at 6'11", highly recruited. Bob Knight's #1 big man coming out of high school. We successfully recruited. Those two big guys with the other 7 that we had, we would have been a kind of team that could have contended for that top 4 or 5 teams in the Big Ten. And even in that year, with the great teams we had, excellent shot at being that first team maybe to go to the NCAA tournament. We were the first team in Northwestern history to go to postseason play. So there's some pride in that, of course, but it could have been a whole lot better.
Unfortunately, there weren't 64, 65 teams.
No, and as we know in coaching, the next night we're playing DePaul, and as you said, we get beat on a half-court shot. We have a 9-point lead with 3 minutes to go. 18,000. Ray Myers has said this to his dying day, that the greatest game he'd ever been associated in was the Rosemont Horizon, DePaul versus Northwestern, last-second shot, and everybody, half the place with Northwestern, half DePaul. We had a 9-point lead. I was a great coach at that point with 3 minutes to go. Timeout. And Ray Meyer, they put a press on. They're following us. We miss 4 straight 1-and-1s, front end of front and ones, and miss a layup on a pass that if we catch and put it in, any one of those with 1 or 2 points, we win. And of course, I became a dumb coach real fast.
Not at all. I was there that night. I bet there's 100,000 other people who say they were there as well.
Yeah.
But it
was
a
fun.
great game, and I wish I'd been there for the 49-point game. But congratulations on a record that still stands and a great career. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you. It's been a lot of fun. Appreciate it.
Rich Falk. We'll have more of Wildcat Fastbreak coming up in a moment.